The sterile chill of the laboratory always felt like a perverse comfort, a stark contrast to the decay I fought against every waking moment. Tonight, however, the cold seeped deeper, chilling me to the very marrow, a premonition clinging to the air like the metallic tang of formaldehyde. Years I dedicated, a lifetime consumed by the singular, burning ambition to unravel death's finality. Not for religious solace, not for some abstract concept of legacy, but for the sheer, brutal defiance of it. Mortality, I believed, was a disease, a biological flaw to be corrected, and I, Dr. Alistair Reed, was on the precipice of its cure. My obsession had cost me everything: relationships fractured, reputation tarnished, sanity questioned more than once. But tonight, the whispers of doubt were drowned out by the hum of the reanimation chamber, the soft glow of the monitors painting the room in an eerie, expectant light. The subject lay still within the chamber, a man named Elias Thorne, recently deceased, a victim of a sudden cardiac arrest. His face, moments ago slack and gray, now held a faint, almost imperceptible flush. It was a delicate dance, this resurrection, a symphony of bioelectrical impulses and cellular regeneration, a process I'd painstakingly crafted and refined. I danced with death before, in the sterile confines of emergency rooms and operating theaters, but this was different. This was not a desperate struggle to hold onto life. This was a deliberate yank back from the abyss. The monitors flickered, displaying a cascade of data, brainwave activity spiking erratically, vital signs fluctuating, a chaotic symphony of rebirth. It was working. My technology, a complex nexus of neural interfaces and biostimulants, was bridging the gap, coaxing the dormant cells back into action. A tremor ran through Elias's body, a subtle ripple at first, then a violent shudder that shook the entire chamber. A guttural gasp escaped his lips, a sound that was both a victory cry and a chilling lament. He sat upright, his eyes snapping open, pupils dilated, reflecting the cold, clinical light. There was a disorientation, a confusion that I expected, a temporary side effect of the process. "Elias?" I asked, my voice tight with anticipation, a tremor of excitement underlying the professional calm I tried to project. He stared blankly ahead, unseeing, his chest heaving with ragged breaths. The air in the lab grew thick with a strange, cloying scent, a sickly sweet odor that I couldn't place, a smell that triggered a primal unease deep within me. "Elias, can you hear me?" I pressed, stepping closer to the chamber. He turned his head slowly, mechanically, his eyes locking onto mine. But there was nothing there. No recognition, no flicker of humanity. Just an empty, vacant stare that sent a shiver crawling down my spine. It was like looking into a mirror reflecting a ghost. He moved then, a jerky, unnatural motion, climbing out of the chamber with a disturbing lack of coordination. He stood unsteadily, swaying slightly, his limbs moving as if controlled by invisible strings. He was alive undeniably, but wrong, terribly, irrevocably wrong. He opened his mouth, and a sound emerged, not a voice, but a low, guttural moan, a sound that resonated deep within my bones, a sound that spoke of emptiness and despair. It was the sound of a soul lost, a vessel inhabited by something else. The triumph I'd felt moments ago evaporated, replaced by a cold dread that gripped me like a vice. This wasn't resurrection. It was something far more sinister. I had not conquered death. I had perverted it. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave, the horrifying potential of my creation unfolding in my mind like a grotesque tapestry. What had I unleashed? What had I brought back? The city outside my lab, the world itself, suddenly felt fragile, vulnerable, teetering on the edge of an abyss I had unwittingly opened. This was not the dawn of a new era. It was the beginning of a nightmare, and I, in my hubris, had become its architect. The reanimated Elias took a step toward me, his eyes still vacant, his movements unervingly slow and deliberate. The sickly sweet scent intensified, filling my nostrils, choking me with a sense of impending doom. I stumbled backward, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. This was just the beginning. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the dead would not remain confined to my laboratory. They were coming, and I was their target. The immediate aftermath was a blur of frantic activity, a desperate attempt to contain the burgeoning catastrophe. My initial instinct was containment, a futile hope that I could somehow reverse the process, confine this horror to the sterile walls of my laboratory. I secured the reanimation chamber, reinforced the doors, implemented lockdown protocols, gestures that now felt pathetically inadequate against the looming threat. Elias, or rather, what remained of him, paced restlessly within the lab, his movements erratic, his moans a constant, unnerving drone. He was a prisoner, yes, but also a chilling harbinger of what was to come. Beyond the immediate physical threat, a deeper, more insidious terror began to take root, the creeping realization of the ethical abyss I had plunged into. The Hippocratic oath, once a guiding principle, now felt like a cruel mockery. I had sworn to do no harm, yet my ambition had birthed something profoundly malevolent. The question wasn't just about the physical danger these reanimated beings posed, but about the very nature of life, death, and the soul. Had I merely reanimated a corpse, or had I created a grotesque imitation of life, a soulless puppet devoid of the essence of humanity? Consider, for a moment, the implications for individual autonomy and the sanctity of consciousness. What right did I have to tamper with the boundaries of existence, to usurp the natural order? This was no longer a scientific endeavor. It was a moral cataclysm. Adding another layer to this mounting dread was the insidious sensation of being watched, a persistent feeling that transcended mere paranoia. It was as if the reanimated Elias possessed an awareness that extended beyond his vacant stare, a silent, malevolent scrutiny that permeated the lab. The shadows seemed to deepen, the air grew heavy with an unseen presence, and the hum of the equipment morphed into a discordant symphony of unease. It wasn't just Elias. It was something else, something vast and unknowable, a silent intelligence that pulsed just beneath the surface of this unnatural phenomenon. This sensation introduced a novel dimension to the horror, suggesting that the reanimation process had not merely revived bodies, but had also opened a conduit to something far more sinister, an entity that regarded humanity with cold, calculating interest. Consequently, my focus shifted from simple containment to understanding. I needed to dissect this phenomenon, to unravel the mechanics of this twisted rebirth. Perhaps within the chaotic data streams and aberrant neural pathways lay a clue, a key to reversing the process or, at the very least, mitigating its effects. The scientific mind, the part of me that had driven this obsession for so long, still clung to the hope of a solution, a rational explanation for the irrational horror unfolding before me. However, this pursuit of knowledge was now tinged with a desperate urgency, a race against the encroaching darkness. If I failed to comprehend the nature of this threat, I knew that the consequences would extend far beyond the confines of my laboratory, engulfing the city, perhaps the world, in a tide of the undead. The clock was ticking, and the silence of the grave was about to be shattered. My initial investigations focused on the neurological aspects of the reanimation, a desperate attempt to find a tangible, scientific basis for the disturbing emptiness I had witnessed. The brain scans revealed a perplexing paradox, significant activity across various regions, yet a profound disconnect, as if the signals were firing randomly, lacking the cohesive orchestration of a sentient mind. It was akin to a symphony orchestra playing at full volume, each instrument blaring its own tune, yet devoid of melody or harmony. This suggested a fundamental disruption not merely of consciousness, but of the very architecture of thought itself. The revived Elias's brain was a battlefield of electrical impulses, a chaotic storm raging within a hollow shell. A crucial component to this enigma, however, extended beyond the purely neurological. Consider, for instance, the potential influence of the biostimulants I had employed. While designed to restore cellular function, could they have inadvertently triggered unforeseen reactions, altering the fundamental chemistry of the brain in ways that defied conventional understanding? I began to scrutinize the molecular structure of the compounds, searching for any indication of unexpected interactions, any hint of a catalyst for this macabre transformation. The possibility arose that the very tools I had wielded in my ambition to conquer death had become instruments of its perverse triumph. An additional perspective to contemplate involves the potential for a transference phenomenon. It occurred to me that the vacant stare, the jerky movements, the chilling moans, could these be manifestations of something else attempting to inhabit the revived body? Could the reanimation process have inadvertently created a void, a gateway for an external entity to cross the threshold between worlds? The notion, previously relegated to the realm of folklore and superstition, now clawed its way into my scientific consciousness. The laboratory, once a sanctuary of reason, now felt like a potential crossroads, a nexus point for forces I could scarcely comprehend. Furthermore, the unsettling scent that permeated the lab offered an alternative avenue of inquiry. Its sickly sweetness, initially dismissed as a byproduct of the reanimation process, now struck me as a possible signature, a chemical marker of the transformation itself. Could this odor be a volatile compound released during the process? A substance that not only signaled the reanimation but also played a role in the ensuing behavioral aberrations? Imagine, if you will, a pheromone of the undead, a signal that draws others, a siren's call echoing in the silent spaces between life and death. Consequently, I expanded my research, delving into fields previously considered beyond the scope of my expertise: toxicology, parapsychology, even ancient folklore surrounding death and resurrection. The scientific method, once my unwavering guide, now felt like a flickering candle in a vast, encroaching darkness. I was venturing into uncharted territory, a landscape where the laws of physics seemed to bend and the boundaries of reality blurred. The limitations of my lab-bound investigations soon became starkly apparent. While I dissected data streams and scrutinized cellular structures, the unsettling truth remained that Elias was not a static specimen. He moved, he reacted, he existed within a world beyond the sterile confines of my observation chamber. To fully grasp the nature of this reanimation, and, more critically, to devise a countermeasure, I needed to understand its interaction with the external environment. This necessitated a risky, almost unthinkable step: venturing outside the protective shell of my lab and confronting the horror in its nascent form within the wider urban landscape. Consider, for example, the potential for a feedback loop between Elias and the city itself. Might the urban electromagnetic field, a complex tapestry woven from power grids, communication networks, and the very fabric of modern life, exert an influence on the reanimated brain? Could these external stimuli amplify the chaotic neural activity, exacerbating the condition and potentially triggering unforeseen mutations or behavioral shifts? This line of inquiry suggested a terrifying symbiosis, a city unwittingly feeding the very horror it might soon be forced to confront. Expanding on this, the question of communication arose as a paramount concern. Elias's guttural moans, initially dismissed as mere vocalizations, now struck me as potentially carrying a deeper significance. Could these sounds function as a rudimentary form of communication, a signal directed toward others, living or otherwise? If so, what message were they conveying? And to whom? The possibility of a nascent undead network, a macabre hive mind forming within the city's shadows, sent a fresh wave of icy dread through me. Now, consider how this applies when you face the possibility of a silent epidemic, a plague transmitted not by virus or bacteria, but by the very vibrations of the human voice, contorted into a symphony of suffering. A complementary facet of this puzzle involved the psychological impact of the reanimation on the individual themselves. What distorted memories, what fragments of a former life might still flicker within the vacant shell? Could these echoes of humanity be exploited, manipulated, or perhaps even used as a lever to reverse the process? Conversely, what if the reanimation amplified the darker aspects of the individual's personality, unleashing dormant pathologies and transforming the revived into grotesque caricatures of their former selves? Think of the tragic irony, the potential for a second death, a complete erasure of the self, inflicted not by the cessation of vital functions, but by the very act of resurrection. Thus, my focus turned to reconnaissance, a desperate attempt to map the contours of this emerging nightmare. I needed to observe Elias in his natural habitat, to track his movements, to decipher his behavior, and to intercept any potential communication. This meant venturing into the city's underbelly, the dimly lit alleys and forgotten corners where shadows danced and the line between the living and the dead blurred. It was a descent into the abyss, a journey fraught with peril, but one I knew I had to undertake. The fate of the city, and perhaps much more, hung precariously in the balance. And I, the architect of this horror, was now its reluctant hunter. Reflecting on this journey thus far, we find ourselves standing at a precipice, the vast expanse of what we've uncovered stretching behind us like a shadowy, labyrinthine path. The individual threads of inquiry, seemingly disparate at their inception, now intertwined to form a complex tapestry, a grim masterpiece woven with the very fabric of fear and the unsettling essence of the unknown. The echoes of our initial questions resonate with a newfound urgency, amplified by the chilling discoveries we have made along the way. It is as if we have descended into the heart of a storm, the tempestuous winds of scientific ambition and moral transgression swirling around us, carrying whispers of a horror both profoundly personal and terrifyingly universal. As the narrative unfolds, the initial pursuit of knowledge, the yearning to decipher the enigma of reanimation, transforms into a desperate struggle for survival, a race against a tide that threatens to engulf not just the individual but the very foundations of our perceived reality. The laboratory, once a beacon of scientific inquiry, now stands as a stark monument to the perilous dance between innovation and hubris, a crucible where the boundaries of life and death have been irrevocably blurred. The sterile chill of the scientific environment becomes an almost mocking reminder of the cold, hard truths we are forced to confront, truths that challenge our understanding of consciousness, the soul, and the very essence of what it means to be human. Drawing these strands together, we see a disturbing portrait emerging, one where the familiar contours of our world are distorted, fractured by the intrusion of something alien and malevolent. The city, a vibrant organism teeming with life, now pulses with an undercurrent of dread, its hidden corners and shadowed alleys becoming potential gateways to a nightmare made real. The vibrant tapestry of urban existence is fraying at the edges, revealing the unsettling void that lies beneath, a void that seems to mirror the emptiness within the reanimated forms themselves. This convergence of personal and societal horror creates a palpable sense of unease, a feeling that the very fabric of our world is unraveling, thread by thread. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes shrouded in a chilling uncertainty. The scientific method, our trusted compass in the realm of the unknown, seems to falter in the face of this unprecedented horror, its familiar landmarks obscured by the encroaching darkness. We are left to navigate by instinct, by the faint glimmer of hope that flickers amidst the overwhelming dread. A hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we can find a way to stem the tide, to reclaim the boundaries that have been so brutally violated. The weight of this responsibility rests heavily upon us, a burden that amplifies the chilling realization that the solutions we seek may lie not just in the realm of science, but in the very depths of our own humanity. As we pivot towards the final reflection, the cumulative weight of our discoveries presses down upon us, a chilling reminder of the delicate balance between progress and peril. The echoes of the reanimated moans seem to linger in the air, a haunting symphony of loss and despair that underscores the profound ethical implications of our actions. The line between hunter and hunted blurs, the roles reversing in a macabre dance of survival, leaving us to question the very nature of our own existence and the price we are willing to pay to conquer the ultimate frontier. The final act awaits, and the curtain is about to rise on a stage where the fate of humanity hangs precariously in the balance. The hunt for a solution, born from the crucible of scientific ambition and ethical compromise, had become a desperate pilgrimage into the heart of a nightmare I had unwittingly crafted. Beyond the data points and cellular structures, beyond the moans echoing through the city's darkened arteries, lay a more profound truth. Death, it seemed, possessed a gravity that transcended mere biological cessation. It was a boundary, a chasm, and the act of forcibly bridging it had unleashed something far more insidious than a reanimated corpse. It had opened a door to a realm where the very essence of self was fractured, where the echoes of life were twisted into grotesque parodies. The city, once a symphony of human endeavor, now resonated with a discordant undertone, a chilling chorus of absence. The reanimated were not simply bodies walking. They were vessels, hollow shells inhabited by an emptiness that seemed to seep into the very fabric of the urban landscape. It was a contagion of the soul, a silent erosion of identity that threatened to consume not just individuals, but the collective spirit of humanity. The chilling question lingered: could a society built on connection and empathy survive when confronted with the absolute negation of both? The scientific pursuit, the noble quest for understanding, had become inextricably intertwined with a moral reckoning. The ambition to conquer death, once a shining beacon of progress, now cast a long, ominous shadow, revealing the perilous consequences of unchecked hubris. The tools of science, wielded without the guiding hand of ethical consideration, had become instruments of a perverse creation, a twisted mockery of life itself. The lesson was stark and unforgiving. Knowledge without wisdom was not merely incomplete, it was a potential catalyst for catastrophe. My final confrontation, when it arrived, was not a battle against the reanimated horde, but a struggle with the echoes of my own actions. The technology, the very nexus of this horror, pulsed with a malevolent energy, a silent testament to the boundary I had transgressed. To destroy it was to relinquish a dream, a lifetime's obsession, but to preserve it was to condemn the world to an unending nightmare. The choice, when it came, was not a triumph of intellect, but a surrender to a deeper, more profound understanding. The reanimation cycle, I realized, was not merely a scientific phenomenon. It was a reflection of a fundamental human yearning, the desperate clinging to existence in the face of mortality. Yet, true life, true connection, resided not in the defiance of death, but in the embrace of the present, in the cherishing of the fleeting moments of shared experience. The true cure for mortality, perhaps, lay not in extending life, but in deepening it. The work to truly live begins now, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, where the echoes of our humanity resonate.